So today is a bit of a weird day around MLS. Usually whenever we get some midweek action, we usually have games that not only takes place on Wednesday, but this is supposed to be the busiest day in terms of MLS action, where we probably get like 10 to 12 or even 13 games that's taking place in a single day. Well, that's not the case this week, as we have no games that is going to be taking place on Wednesday, but the good news is we are going to get game back tomorrow, as tomorrow is going to be the mouth-watering matchup between the Seattle Sounders versus the Portland Timbers, also known as the top of the table battle in the Western Conference in the Cascadia Derby. Now, speaking of games around MLS, news of the week episode, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that MLS have rescheduled 4 matches that originally was postponed because one or both of the team had positive COVID-19 tests, and that these 4 matches will be rescheduled for November 4th, and these 4 games are Minnesota versus Chicago, Orlando City versus Columbus, Portland versus Colorado, and the Galaxy versus the Seattle Sounders. There's no match time that they have. Well, actually, they have already announced the match time for all of these games, but one other thing that we still don't know is that there's still a couple of games that has not been rescheduled, and a lot of them are the Colorado game that, we have one of the Colorado game that has been rescheduled, but that's pretty much it. And that, yeah, I still think that MLS, as we get closer and closer to decision day, they're going to have to make their own big decision in terms of how the regular season is going to go and how are we going to determine in terms of playoff seeding. I mean, are we going to go with the points per game system, or the fact that we are just going to have to unfortunately forfeit Colorado in terms of them getting to the playoffs because they have just so many games that has been postponed and that they don't meet that kind of threshold in terms of potentially have a chance to qualify for the playoffs. I mean, I just don't know how this is going to work out, but it'll be very interesting to see what MLS is going to do in terms of determine who exactly is going to be going to the playoffs and the seeding of it, and who is actually going to be eliminated from the playoffs. Now, the Seattle Sounders, of course, have traded Bowana to Nashville in exchange for Jimmy Madrona, and that the Sounders will also receive up to $250,000 general allocation money. And this is probably the biggest move from this week, as you can probably tell on the board, there really isn't a lot of newsworthy things for me to talk about in the news of the week video, but this was probably the biggest one. As there was rumor the fact that Bowana was going to Nashville from last week, and it seemed like that rumor is now true, and that it has been official that he is going to be going to Nashville. And I think this is a win-win for both of these teams, because Bowana, I feel like he really needs a kind of a change of scenery, and as much as he loved to stay with the Seattle Sounders, and obviously he's definitely one of the fan favorite, with the way that he's kind of buried under the depth chart for the Seattle Sounders, it feels like if he's going to continue to grow, he need to go to another MLS team and just need a change of scenery. And that, I think with him going to Nashville, he's going to get some chances in terms of starting games that going to continue to grow of some high potential that he can be as a player. Now, for the Sounders, even though they did lose some of their depth, they of course were able to receive that in Jimmy Madrona, who I'm surprised he hasn't made a lot of appearance with Nashville. I mean, when Nashville picked up him, I believe in the expansion draft, I thought he was going to make a couple of appearances for this team, but I don't think he has actually even appeared for this Nashville team, so it seemed like they just feel like he might not be part of the plan, so that they decided to trade him to the Seattle Sounders. And again, even though they lost some depth in terms of Bowana going to Nashville, they're going to get that back with Jimmy Madrona being in the spot, and that the Sounders could also receive up to around $250,000 allocation money because of that. Now, speaking of the Seattle Sounders, talking about some of the rumors that has happened, and I don't know for these past couple of weeks, what is it with Saudi Arabia team decided to go to MLS and really raid some of our best players? Because now it seemed like Nico Ladero is the latest player to be linked with a move to Saudi Arabia, and we already saw a couple of players that have already made the move with the likes of Fiataidier and also Alexandro Mitrita. But this one, I would be shocked if this actually was the case. I mean, I understand that, some of these players, they want to move to Saudi Arabia either due to the fact that they want to be closer with their family or the fact that they want that money when they go to that league. But with Nico Ladero, of how his family is happy in Seattle, and he's repeatedly said that he is happy where he is right now in Seattle, I just will be absolutely stunned if this move does happen, and it would just make absolutely no sense whatsoever that the Seattle Sounders would get rid of one of their best player in the Star 11 and trade them to Saudi Arabia. Like, even if a team in Saudi Arabia is gonna offer a lucrative deal to get Nico Ladero from the Seattle Sounders, there's just no way in the world the Sounders are going to try to make the move. Like, surely that can't be the case. Now, talk about surprising MLS transfer rumor. We have another surprising MLS transfer rumor, as LAFC midfielder Latif Blessing seems to rumored to receive interest from Brazilian side Vasco. Now, usually in terms of the logistic of transfer around MLS, it's usually where MLS teams are going down to South America and looking for those hidden gems to bring them up to MLS to develop them so that they can sell them off of a profit. But I don't remember a case where it's the opposite way of how logistics work, and how you would see in this case LAFC could potentially selling Latif Blessing going down to South America, and that a South American team, of course, will develop him. Like, in many ways, I feel like if Latif Blessing is going to make him move away from LAFC, it would be Europe, the one that I would think most likely that is the case. So this is definitely a very surprising kind of rumor, and one that, like I said about the Nico Ladero rumor, I just don't see this one happening, and that I don't think LAFC, especially of the crisis that they're going through in terms of injuries and guys that is on international duty, there's just no way in the world they're even thinking about potentially moving Latif Blessing. They might think about moving him to Europe maybe this off-season or the very next one, but I just don't see he's going to go to South America, and that if he's going to make it the next step in his career, it's most likely going to be Europe instead of South America. Now, the Vancouver Whitecaps have announced the permanent signing of Renko Veselinovic, and this kind of signing was kind of in some way forced by the Vancouver Whitecaps, because there was actually a very interesting kind of clause, and kind of a clause move when the Whitecaps got Renko Veselinovic on loan from a Serbian club that pretty much takes the meaning of loan deal to a next level. As basically when they got Veselinovic to the Whitecaps, there was a clause says that, if he does start 12 games for the Vancouver Whitecaps, then yeah, you have to basically purchase him, and that clause automatically trigger, and that the Vancouver Whitecaps going to have to sign him permanently. Well, Veselinovic has started 12 times for the Vancouver Whitecaps, and therefore that clause, of course, has triggered. And the reason why I say that took loan move to a next level, I mean, that's the definition of loan move. I mean, you basically get a guy for pretty much 11 games, and if he does work out for you, then you can play him again, but then you're going to have to buy him permanently, and that, of course, is the case here. But other than that, Veselinovic, he's been okay with Vancouver. I wouldn't say he has been brilliant, and that this is one of the better signings for the Vancouver Whitecaps, but he hasn't been too terrible to say that this is just a bad move from the Vancouver Whitecaps. And, well, I wouldn't say bad move, but they're kind of forced to do this move. But depending on the price that they're going to have to pay to that Serbian club that they got Veselinovic on loan, yeah, this could really determine whether or not if this is going to be a bad move, and that if it's an expensive price, then yeah, this might be a bad move that the Vancouver Whitecaps just made. Now, Bojan, of course, win Player of the Week after he had that spectacular performance against Inter Miami, and congratulations to him winning the Player of the Week. But moving on, in terms of the next news, is that DC United, remember how last week I talked about Joe Ellis being linked with this team? Well, it seemed like there's another head coach that could be linked with the DC United head coaching job. And that, of course, is FC Tulsa head coach Michael Sien. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Now, this is kind of a very, very strange one, and in some way, if these DC fans look at this move, they probably will instantly say that this is an example of clearly there's no really just kind of ambition in terms of trying to get a better name and trying to get a head coach that actually will get them turn around after that horrid spell that they had this season, and kind of things kind of got really sour under the Ben Olsen era. But we shall see how this, of course, will go. And that I haven't heard a lot about this head coach, and that I haven't seen a lot of USL head coach that make the jump to being the head coach of MLS, and that they could be relatively successful. But if DC United is actually linked with him, they probably have seen something that they think he is going to be the right man for that job. But either way, this is kind of a very strange one, and in some way, I really want them to potentially get Jill Ellis as their head coach, because it would be such a landmark kind of moment, not only for DC United, but also in terms of the league and in this sports too, with the fact that he would become not only the first female head coach in MLS, but maybe the first female, one of the more notable female head coach to take over a soccer team. But we shall see if that, of course, is the case. Now, finally, in terms of the last news of the week, is something to relate with California. So, there's some good news that came out of California just a couple of days ago. Well, not a couple of days ago, but more like yesterday. And that is California is actually now saying that they are going to allow fans in the stands for outdoor sporting event as long as there is a low infection rate. And I think they have kind of like a different color of tier, where if you get into, I believe, the yellow tier or the orange tier, you are allowed certain amount of percentage of fans allowed back into the stands, which that, of course, is great news for people that really want to get back to watching games live around California, right? Well, that's the good news. The bad news about this news is that it seemed like local county officials are not agreeing with this rule. And Santa Clara County, when they saw this happening, they were definitely shocked about that, and they immediately said that no, we are not allowing any of our sports team in terms of having fans back into the stadium. I think they even did it quicker than when the 49ers announced that they were going to have around 17,000 fans at Levi Stadium as soon as possible, and probably did it even quicker when the Quakes made a statement talk about they are potentially having fans back at their stadium too. And as much as I know that there's a lot of people that really want to get back into watching games live, and I myself, I really want to go back to the Quakes Stadium and watch the Quakes live in person instead of just sitting here and watch it on TV, which for the past couple of weeks I started to get it started to feel a little bit more normal, the fact that I'm actually watching the Quakes play even though they're playing at home, because for a long time, and especially early part, it was very strange seeing the Quakes for me watching the Quakes play on TV, because I usually are always at the stadium whenever they play a home game. But as much as I really want to go back to it, I think this is the right choice. The fact that Santa Clara County is saying that they are not allowing any fans back into the stadium despite what the state rule. And I know that right now some people will argue, well, if you are of course allow indoor kind of dining, then why in the world you're not allowing outdoor sporting events? Which in some way that is kind of a good argument, but maybe the argument that they're making right now is, since we're going to have more people that is gathering in outdoor sporting event compared to indoor dining, that might be the reason why we are not allowing that. And that, for me, in general, I think if the Quakes are thinking about opening up their stadium, I don't think it's really a right choice, the fact that since there's only 2 games left of the season, that they're just going to open the stadium so that they can, of course, make up some of that game day revenue that they lost from this season. And technically, the Quakes, they actually have made up some game day revenue, because remember how I talk about how the Quakes are hosting these viewing parties at the 7-Up Epic Center, and the fact that anytime when the Quakes are playing at home, they would charge fans $45 to go to their viewing party. And I said that was absolutely ridiculous, and just clearly an example of the fact that the Quakes are being greedy, because that actually costs more than I actually go to every single Quakes game, and you don't even get a chance to watch the action. Well, if you're lucky enough that your car is tall enough where you can see the action over Labina, the outdoor sports bar, then maybe that of course is worth the price. But for the most part, you're just basically watching it on the big screen, and you have to fork out $45 for that. Well, maybe that the reason why the Quakes did that isn't really just because they're greedy, but more because that is the way that they're trying to make up in terms of game day revenue. So in some way, they already have a way in terms of making up some of their game day revenue, and I just don't see them thinking about taking the big risk of actually decided to have a limited fans in the stadium to make up even more game day revenue. Like, as much as I know the Quakes are being very greedy in terms of the money, and are also notorious in terms of not spending that money that they always tends to be very greedy with, I think it might be the right decision, the fact that they are going to follow what the Santa Clara County Health are going to say, that, well, we are not allowing any fans back into the stands, because, you know, we're still getting thousands of cases that is going on around California. Now, I don't know the situation right now down in Southern California, but I have heard rumors that they are also doing the same thing as what Santa Clara County is going to do, which is they say that there's going to be no fans allowed in the stadium. So unfortunately, if you're a Galaxy or LAFC fans, yeah, most likely you're not going to be returning to your stadium because of the fact that I've heard they are saying that there's no way we're allowing any sporting events that is going to take place. And I think that would even make more sense down in LA, because LA by far right now has the highest infection rate and had the highest cases of COVID-19 in the state right now, and it would be just ridiculous, and it would be the definition of a double standard, the fact that our county with some of the fewest amount of cases, and yet our counties say no, and then down in LA they said, well, you know, you can go back into the stadium. I mean, yes, you can see that we have the most cases right now, but who gives a crap? We're happy to allow fans back in the stadium because we just decided to make that stupid decision. But either way, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these news, and most importantly, let me know in the comments below your opinion about the fact that are we going to see in the future that fans are going to be allowed back into sporting events in California or in other states that are slowly trying to open up. Like, I really think in terms of every single MLS team having fans back into the stands, I feel like the earliest might be next season, and even then I think we're going to still have a limited amount of capacity, because as long as if there's no vaccine in terms of this COVID-19 situation, and as long as the spread of this virus is not slowing down, which right now it's actually started to grow again, and that I've heard news that talks about we are about to go through a third wave here in this country, there's just no way in the world we are going to have every single team to have fans back into the stands right now, and especially a full capacity for any of these team that is playing with fans in the stands for their home games. But that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.